And we are live. And today we were supposed to be having our weekly show, The Cavern of Chaos, on Howler Mouse's channel. But Tim is doing family stuff today, and so is Jared, which is our backup channel. So we are here, which means that Scott and I will probably have nobody watching us.
Probably. So today you don't get the entire caverns of chaos, you just get these stalactites of chaos.
Although we've got a couple of comments here from Vincenzo C. and Dominic Powell. Hi, guys. We hope to keep you entertained and not bored. And I took some stuff out of the bookshelf to look at. And since Scott here is a big fan of pulp heroes and adventure heroes, I thought I'd take some of these out, and we can talk about how literature has influenced comics and vice versa. Like here, I have the trade paperback of the Tarzan Carson of Venus crossover, which is one of my favorite Tarzan comics. It's got great art by Igor Corday, and right now, Tarzan is one of those characters that is as widely known inside comics as outside it, and
yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So I don't know if you ever read the comic strip. You have to go through eras because it's been there are so many years to cover that you have to pick a couple of favorites.
And Edgar Rice Burroughs is really smart because he was the first author that really capitalized on his intellectual property and introduced it in other media.
Man, the comics is here, so yeah, it went with the obvious route.
Yeah, he only had to do half as much work in coming up with alternate names for his history.
Yeah, especially because we're both fat, so we can be Laurel and Hardy.
Fair.
Yeah. I remember actually reading some Bern Hogarth comic strips of Tarzan, and the Russ Manning Sundays have been reprinted extensively in several countries.
Actually,
but the thing about comic strips, the thing about comic strips is that they just keep the story flowing. You don't have an idea, oh, this is my favorite storyline. You just read the strip and you come back for more. And
right.
I'm really not sure why we keep coming back, since the stories don't stay in our brains the same way as they do with comics.
Really depends on the strip that you're talking about. Tarzan stories, I mean, they're what they are. They're Tarzan stories. Same thing with the Phantom. Comic strips also tended, well, in modern comic strips, let's say, dealt with like the past 40 years or so, also tend to be a little more contemporary in scope as well. So you have a lot of humor is also political, which may not hold up in 40, 50 years. Like you could probably read Calvin and Hobbes in 50 years and get just as much out of it. I'm not sure you could say the same for Doonesbury.
Yeah.
Not say Doonesbury is bad, but it's just political based humor after a certain amount of time goes by is just not going to have the same impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it becomes a sort of a cultural artifact, but the joke isn't funny anymore. And when I look at these adventure comic strips, they were better back in the old days because they centered more on the adventure, and now they try to do more character development. And even the Phantom, which is an old favorite of mine, they spend a lot of time on the Phantom's kids nowadays.
Right. Gosh, what Phantom are they up to now? Like the 37th generation, something like that?
21st.
Okay. I knew it was several.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Bill, how's it going?
Speaking of the Phantom, from what I understand, the Frew Publications version of the Phantom that's published in Australia, from what I understand, is the longest running periodical comics related anything in the world.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure the exact number, but
it's over 3,000.
Over 3,000 now? Yeah, I was going to say, I wasn't sure if they had gone past 2000, but yeah,
Yeah.
nothing's gone on as long. Not even Beano in the UK, not Spirou in France. Yeah, man.
Long
And
time.
you always find those examples in the weirdest places because it's not just the Australians. India as their own phantom comic with locally produced stories. There's also the Egmont publications for Scandinavia, and sometimes they even hire famous American writers to come up with stories. I remember that Roger Stern was actually writing the Phantom about 15 years ago.
Just for the Scandinavian version. Huh?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Hmm. So I don't know how much they pay him. I doubt that it was getting the same page rate as he would do for a Marvel comic, but that was at the time. That was at the time that he was, I wouldn't say blacklisted, but he wasn't working at Marvel as much. I think when Quesada took over, and a few of the old guys that were still doing stuff, they kind of disappeared and they had nowhere left to go. And Italy and Scandinavia were obvious places.
Huh. I know Donald Duck is huge in Scandinavia.
Yeah, they have studios there. Uh, I actually don't. I'm not entirely sure which Scandinavian stories I've read of Disney. I think the Italians ones were more common in the comics that I read, but I'm pretty sure there were some Scandinavian ones, especially if they deal with Fedri and his nephew. There's more. Gladstone Gander shows up a lot more in important publications, and to me, Uncle Scrooge's enemy was not Flintheart Glomgold. It was John Rockerduck. It was always Rockerduck showing up. The Italians loved him, loved having him around. It was either Uncle Scrooge had a bet with Rockerduck about something, which usually ended with him Rockerduck eating his own hat, or it was attempt number 7,000 of the Beagle Boys trying to break into the money bin.
Yeah.
And they never bothered with names. The Beagle Boys always had were known by their prisoner numbers.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Now the relationship with pulps is something that's always present. So they always try to bring these back. Shadow, Doc Savage, even the Avenger here. And there was a time when Dynamite was going really heavy on these guys, and plus the Alex Ross covers to make them appealing, because sometimes the interior art was not as good. Not that it's entirely bad, but it's readable. It's modern.
When you have guys like Alex Ross and Michael Kaluta doing shadow covers, and it's kind of hard to live up to that when you're doing interiors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially when it's a company like Dynamite. They don't have the same budgets, and some of these guys they got an Italian guy to do here, Giovanni Timpano, and this story is actually written by Michael Uslan.
Right.
So it's actually entertaining. In this comic, it decided to explain what was the deal with Doc Savage's hair, because originally it wasn't the straight cap. Yeah.
Right.
And it changes it here.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Because these are kind of continuity implants, but they don't have to be actual canon. So how much can we enjoy these if they don't count?
So in this case, it was continuity hair implants. Then.
Yeah. But even if they're not, they don't affect the official history of the character. I kind of like them.
Like in the old schools.
Yeah, it's an old school thing, and the characters are in action. It doesn't really matter if there's a tight continuity or not. Not with characters like these. The same with Tarzan. When they do new stories, they don't have to adhere to any sort of continuity.
I know a few years ago, I don't 5, 6, 7 years ago, something like that. DC had a pulp character crossover,
Hmm.
and I can't remember. It's called First Wave.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a little line that had Doc Savage, the Shadow. I can't remember if it had the Avenger in it or not. I'm not 100% sure.
No.
Some of the stories were okay, and other ones were not very good.
Yeah, I think it was the they also got the rights to the spirit at the same time. They tried to have
Yeah, that's
the
right. I
spirit.
forgot
Yeah.
that the Spirit was mixed in there as well.
Hmm. Yeah. There was. I remember there was a lot of talk before it started, and then it fizzled out pretty quickly.
Well, yeah, there's also a kind of a little hubbub that came up as some of the interviews they had with creators before the series came out. It's like, this is not your dad's or this is not your grandfather's Shadow or Doc Savage. Like, that's the audience that's going to be interested in it.
Yeah.
You just alienated
Hmm.
80% of your audience right there.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was what I already. I can't remember if I was already 30, but even at age 30, or under 30, if you want to read something like Doc Savage, you do want to see this uh, as an old school style story. It's exactly the reason that you're drawn in. It's not that you're not going to pick up Doc Savage and we're modernizing it for a new age, and now they have cell phones. Yeah, I
There
don't
have
care.
been so many attempts to modernize all the pulp characters and to modern time frame. Matter of fact, James Patterson, the famous
Hmm.
writer, just had a version of Shadow that came out, and I read a review of it, and that's the first thing they do is they put it in the modern era and give him superpowers and
Hmm.
I don't know, guy.
Yeah, and we already went through that in the comics in the late '80s version of the Shadow, when they brought him to modern times and then they made him a cyborg or something.
Oh yeah, we don't talk about that like Highlander fans don't talk
Yeah,
about.
it does not exist.
No, I don't know what that
Mm.
is.
Then we had Howard Chaykin, and it was and yeah, that's the thing. The thing that is the most ridiculous about that, it's Howard Chaykin. So you have the Shadow's face, which is very recognizable. So what does he do? He makes the usual version of himself as the hero, wearing the Shadow's fedora, and and the rest in his clothes.
Archie Comics actually published a Shadow series, and it was awful. I mean, just flat out, just plain awful.
Hmm.
It had very little to do with the actual original characters. It was just like using the characters' names and
Hmm.
using it for name brand recognition.
We
Well,
can't talk about Walt Newton. Come on. Oh yeah.
an interesting construct to put a bunch of characters together.
Hmm.
For anybody that doesn't know what Wold Newton is, basically there was a theory that I think Philip Jose Farmer originally came up with the theory
Hmm.
that there was an asteroid or a meteorite that landed in somewhere in England in the oh
In the
gosh
village of Walt Newton. Yeah,
yeah
the asteroid. Yeah,
yeah
the asteroid was real. It was in 1842, I think. But being a science fiction writer, what does he do? What if the asteroid grants superpowers?
right yeah so a lot of different bloodlines were exposed to the radiation or whatever
Mhm. Well,
that
the
that it had, and so you had everybody from Doc Savage to Campion Bond.
uh,
That was
yeah
affected
the
by this in one way or another.
the idea is pretty sound, and it makes for some interesting concepts. There used to be this site, Win Scott Eckert's site, which grouped a bunch of articles made by other fans of the concept,
Right.
and some of those made their way into a book, which I have in my shelf over there. It's for the modern age. And every once in a while, they do stories set in that Walt Newton universe. Although sometimes they can't use the actual characters, so they have to come up with some copies.
File the serial numbers off, and change the names slightly, and you get an analog. And you know who it's
Yeah,
supposed to be.
yeah. Of course, if you're doing stuff set in the Victorian age, you get this.
Yes. Uh,
This is actually considered part of the Walt Newton universe. According to Walt Newtonians, it fits.
it makes sense. You could spend the rest of your life just looking at all the different little Easter eggs that are hidden in the Extraordinary Gentleman books. You can
Mhm.
spend the rest of your life just tracking all that stuff down and researching it and reading it. And
Well, Jess Nevins already did that.
that's what I'm. Yeah, thanks to Just Evans. Yes.
the the thing about this is that yeah the Wool Newton people, they like comics, but they don't like to add comics to the Wool Newton universe because the number of adventures that are published plus the crossovers makes it difficult to integrate. There are too many alien invasions.
Right.
But with this one, they actually managed to put it in the Wool Newton universe and say it works. Although sometimes they have contrary opinions. For example, here
Sure.
they went with Prince Dakar as Captain Nemo,
Mhm.
and there are Wool Newtonians who think that it was Professor Moriarty who was actually Captain Nemo.
Right.
Others say there was a French character. I can't remember which one, but that was Jean-Marc L'Officier's idea.
I'm wondering who he thought it was.
Mhm. And
Interesting.
a friend of mine has a novel by that guy who did the new Dune novels.
Oh, Kevin J. Anderson.
Yeah, Kevin J. Anderson.
Yeah, I have a Captain Nemo novel. I haven't read it yet, but I have a Captain Nemo novel by him.
Yeah, the novel's not bad. A friend of mine bought it many years ago, and he let me read it. And the novel's not bad,
Cool.
but it's kind of, it goes too much PG-13, and tries to center it too much around his own ideas and doesn't go exactly. Yeah, and it doesn't, that one definitely doesn't fit into the Wool Newton universe. Although Kevin J. Anderson managed to put some interesting cameos inside.
That's cool. Yeah, it's just it's in a stack of to be read stuff. It's years to get through all of it. I'm a big fan of anything that has to do with anything, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first movie I ever watched.
Oh.
I was 3 years old.
Oh.
Yeah, it's 3. My mom was still in college at the time. We were living with my grandparents, and they got their first color television. Big Zenith, probably by the days, I guess it's probably a 28-inch, 30-inch TV, something like that, color, in a giant wooden console. And that's what came on that night. And I sit there maybe 2 feet away from the screen, and I may have blinked twice during the whole thing. And I haven't been the same since.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that type of speculative fiction that we watch when we're 4 or 5, that's larger than reality. It stays with us in a way. Let me see if I can find the other thing that I had here. Oh yeah, like this version of Buck Rogers from Dynamite. Always Dynamite.
I kind of like that version.
Yeah, I do too. I also have that Howard Chaykin version, which is kind of different.
I like that version.
Yeah, but this one's definitely better, and the way they integrate the animals is pretty good. But Buck Rogers, the TV series with Gil Gerard, is one of the first science fiction series that I ever saw on TV, and I was like, what, 4 or 5?
I remember watching it quite fondly, and then also when the Science Fiction Channel launched here in the States. Mm-hmm. The first 2 things, I guess, is the only 2 things they had a license for when they first started broadcasting, were Buck Rogers and the Incredible Hulk.
Oh.
And then they would show repeat the episodes, ad nauseum until they got more programming on. But yeah, but I remember that quite well.
Mm-hmm. They never seem to have much of a budget, because when you think sci-fi channel, you think, oh, man, it's gonna have all the good stuff, and they usually don't. When they started here, they had the Knight Rider, which was science fiction because the card talked.
It was about that much science fiction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Buck Rogers and Tarzan comic strip debuted in the same day, in 1928.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. It was I was looking up ways that I did something for a Portuguese language blog a few years ago, and I was looking up information about how comics influence the way we look at certain characters,
No, sure.
and
Really.
and Buck Rogers is certainly better known than Armageddon 2419, which is something that probably a lot of people have never read.
Whatever number that is. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah, and it was the same with Tarzan. The Before the comic strip, there were already Tarzan movies. There are like three Tarzan movies already by 1910 or something. After the first novel comes out, there are already a bunch of Tarzan movies in production, even before the first real good one.
Tarzan was literally the first multimedia character.
Yeah,
And that's how
uh,
Heroes made a lot of money.
yeah, but he wore he always had long hair, disheveled, and he had a full body, a leopard skin.
Right.
And then when we got to the Johnny Weissmuller movies, that's when they started using the version from the comic strip, which is just the loincloth and nothing else, and the bronze skin and the short hair. It comes from the comic strip.
Yeah, there were some controversies way back in the late teens, early 20s about how how scandalous, how scantily clad the characters were.
Yeah, but what
Nowadays,
did you actually? Yeah, no, sure. But what did you expect? The guy was raised by apes in the jungle. He's not supposed to have a fashion sense.
right? And you have to wonder, like, where is his beard?
That one always. How do you shave and why do you shave?
Well, I mean, granted, you can shave with a knife. That's no big deal. But
Mhm. Yeah. Although I think it was Jane's costume that was actually provocative for the time.
one of the Weissmuller movies, I can't remember which one it was. It may have been the very first one. There was a swimming scene, and the actual footage of Jane, she was actually nude.
Mhm.
And they weren't sure how that was going to go over with the American audience, and I don't think it got quite the pushback they thought it was going to get. But I also think that some of the footage in the prints was cut and then restored later on as well.
Mm. Yeah, I can believe that. I don't remember. Even with clothes on, Jane in the first movie she had a very small costume for the 1930s,
Right.
and it kind of got bigger with the other movies. Um, but it's something that you can't make it believable that those people live in the jungle and they're fully attired. Even so,
Sure. Yeah. And also jungle diseases would have not been kind to the human body either.
mhm. I actually believe that
However, you
Tarzan.
had special Wold Newton radiation that was protected. You had plot armor, even though it was fur covered. So.
Yeah, and there's actually an actual reason why in the old Newtonians come up to explain why Johnny Weissmuller talks me Tarzan in his movies, and that he suffered brain damage fighting somebody, and then there was time travel involved,
Probably
and he met the Flintstones, but they weren't.
met the Flintstones.
They weren't the Flintstones, but he met the Flintstones.
Oh my goodness, I did not catch that part of it.
it's in the book. They explain.
Oh, no, I don't remember a reference to the Flintstones.
That's how they explain why there are a couple of Laurel and Hardy and Abbott and Costello shorts which are set in the Stone Age. It's because the Flintstones are immortal, and Fred and Barney, they're immortal, and they lived until the present day, and
Wow.
they told the movie studios those stories. They also knew the immortals, and they didn't like them.
So if they live, 1 or 200 more years, they may be working for Cogswell Cog and Spacely Sprocket.
Yeah, they are. And remember the
Wold Newton stuff is good, and there's a few parts. Everybody has their different spins and takes on it. There are a couple of them that you just look at as like, no, just no, I don't buy that part of it. But,
Well, Dominic, the
Um,
one was already shown. It was here the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and this is kind of a fun exercise in world building. It's not supposed even the first followers of this idea they warn you're supposed to have fun with the
yeah,
whole Newton universe.
yeah. I think there's a big difference between treating it like an intellectual exercise and actually getting obsessed with it.
Hmm.
There was
Right.
also a I don't know if Old Newton had actually influence him or not, but there was a Manly Webb Wellman Sherlock Holmes story where he was involved in The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells.
Mhm.
And I still have not read that yet, but I really want to read that because I'm also, in addition to being a big fan of 20,000 Leagues, I'm also a big fan of anything to do with War of the Worlds.
Hmm. And do you remember the non-authorized crossover with Arsène Lupin? There was a novel. Yeah, Arsène Lupin versus Sherlock Holmes.
I've
Yeah,
read about it, but I haven't read any of it.
yeah. So
But I
first they
know it
published
has a reputation.
Yeah, so first they published the novel,
Mhm.
and the English agents were not amused. So they took the copies out of circulation and they put new ones in, and they rewrote the story. Now the character was called Sherlock Holmes, and whenever there are character descriptions, it is described as fat, and Watson is now called Wilson, and now he's the one who's thin. And
Sounds like
and
Laura
they
Hardy. Yeah,
Yeah, and they published the novel. But I actually have a Portuguese edition from the 1970s,
gotcha.
and it's kind of supposed to be fun. I think the Arsène Lupin writer thought it was a fun idea, and they just didn't care about licensing and creator rights.
Fair enough.
Yeah, because when we look at these ideas, uh, I know why you should have creators' rights and copyrights, but with the constant Mickey Mouse copyright extension acts, these things are supposed to pass into the public domain. People read these stories; it becomes a part of their own personal history, being influenced by them, and then you get to their grandchildren. They can't look at Buck Rogers and say, "Man, I want to write a Buck Rogers story." No, you can't. You got to pay somebody. You got to pay. And who is that somebody? It's not even a descendant of the original creator, because these things then pass into some sort of corporate control, like what happened with Conan.
Yeah, yeah. It's weird how there's a certain set of rules about what could be published in European uh, Robert E. Howard properties versus North America.
Hmm.
I'm not exactly sure what all is public domain in Europe and what isn't, but from what I understand, and I could be wrong, what I've read, they can't actually use the word Conan in the branding.
Actually,
That's what I
actually,
call it.
we
They
actually
did.
we can.
Okay. But there's another company, I think Ablaze, that's publishing one. They're just calling it the Sumerian. I think
Yeah,
to avoid
because
any potential,
yeah, because
brouhaha with
in
copyright.
the US you can't. It's these stories. These are the ones that are published by Glénat in France.
When those came out, I was looking at there's a Conan Comics related board on Facebook, and some of the guys just could not wrap their brains around it was somebody besides Marvel, and they wouldn't accept it. That's not Conan. That's closer to Conan than what Roy Thomas was actually writing.
Yeah. Yeah, you notice when Roy Thomas left Marvel in 1981, and they got Michael Fleischer or whoever to write those stories. You notice it's not the same thing.
No, it's not.
It becomes more generic.
I actually thought that Kurt Busiek actually did a pretty decent job with Conan for Dark
Hmm.
Horse.
Yeah, he did a good job, and he was following one of the official continuities. I think there are four. So there are some experts who don't agree on which on the order of the stories, but you should be able to follow if you follow those continuities, you always have material to exploit. And Kurt Busiek knew what to do. That he's a fan. He's obviously a long-standing Marvel fan, so you know where
And
to
he
work on that.
had the good sense not to stick him in the Avengers. So,
No, that's the most ridiculous thing. Although there was that what if where Conan stays in the 20th century. It's
Yeah,
one of
a
my
what
favorite
if
what ifs.
story, what if story is fine. It's just when you
Mm,
make it official, establish continuity.
yeah. Hmm. Sure. And the French don't do crossovers with Conan. Not that they'd be able to. Actually, although with this series, I would like to know. I when the series is going to end after 12 albums, and it would actually be interesting if they could do a companion series with other Howard novels
No, like Call,
like Cole and
Solomon Kane.
someone in Steve Costigan.
Oh
There's
my gosh, it's funny you brought that up. There's a Sailor Steve Costigan story that I listened to as part of a podcast. There's a podcast all about Robert E. Howard called the Cromcast, and after they exhausted the Conan stuff, then they started moving into other Howard properties. They read like a radio, almost like a radio play adaptation of a Sailor Steve Costigan story that was so damn funny. I was listening to this and was thinking in my mind the perfect person to draw this as a comic would be Eric Powell from The Goon. I just had this very vivid image of this in my mind. Is like that would look so good on the page. It was absolutely hysterical.
yeah. If they, but the thing that I actually wanted to see if they somehow could do a companion series to this one was see if they could actually do the real Red Sonja in a comic, which is the original
Yeah, not
story.
um, Roy Thomas's version of Red Sonja.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
Sonya Howard's is a completely different character.
She's in the siege of Vienna in the 16th century. So that would be interesting to see because it's a different time period that we usually don't get to see from Howard stories, or
Sure.
maybe some Alborak. I have the Alborak book. With
Who was one of the characters, and I can't remember if it was Borak or if it was somebody else, was illustrated by Frank Cho, and it was really good.
Mhm.
It may have been a different character than El Borak, though. I'm not 100% sure, but it's one of those things that's stuck in the back of your memory.
Mhm. So there's a lot of Howard material to mine
Mhm.
if you want to do literary adaptations.
Yeah, he did some stories set in the Crusades as well.
Here's another literary adaptation that only the French could come up with because I really don't see this taking off in the United States. Hercule Poirot, Murder on the Orient Express.
Right. I think everybody in the States recognizes Poirot
From the TV
TV
series.
series that was shown here on public broadcasting.
Hmm. But doing a comic with Poirot might not sell. The art is actually appropriate for the time period. So, and this is this is a Portuguese edition of the French series, and they're doing not just Poirot, but they're doing Miss Marple and the Beresfords. They're going through all of the Agatha Christie catalog and try to do a best of rather than a
Do
complete
they do
series.
like one complete story in a book?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. That's cool.
Hmm. Actually, I have this one, and they have the first Miss Marple. I didn't buy the Beresford yet, but I like to see what it's about because I'm not familiar with the Beresfords. And I know Poirot and Miss Marple obviously from their respective TV series.
Right.
There was a Miss Marple modern TV series a few years ago, and they had to replace the main actress because the first one I think she died.
Uh,
Of course, they're going with an old lady to portray the character.
sure.
Uh, and now there's a TV series with Father Brown.
I've heard of that one, but I haven't seen any of them.
Hmm. Yeah, and there's actually quite a few British TV series adapting British novel characters. They also do a lot of police action stuff set in the 70s. What was that one called? I can't remember. But and they go with period pieces, even if it's set in the 1970s. So they try to make it close to the original novels as possible.
Gotcha.
Hmm. Even Poirot is always on repeat here, but only seasons 7 to 13, which are the more modern ones. I think it has to do with who holds the rights, because between seasons 6 and 7 they changed studios, so the whoever owns the rights is not the same, and so they're not showing the original ones.
They'd have to renegotiate all the rights to it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure how well that would translate to comics market here in the U.S. Like I like the Brother Cadfael novels, but I think if somebody was to do a comics adaptation of them, most kids under the age of 20 now would look at it and say, "What the heck is this?" So.
Here's something about a few years ago: Ignition City by Warren Ellis.
I've read about half of that.
Yeah, I like the story. A couple of friends of mine said they didn't. That it's probably Warren Ellis's worst comic.
I don't know enough. Well, I take that back. I haven't read enough of Warren Ellis to know what would be his worst and his best.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like it because if you take it what for what it's supposed to be, these characters are all pastiche characters. They're not the real characters, but they appear here. There's then their knockoff, and there's a Flash Gordon knockoff, and there's a Ming the Merciless knockoff, and you recognize all of them,
right?
But even if they have all the names changed,
sure.
The art is not exactly up to par, I guess. I don't know if you can see this. Yeah,
there's a lot of brown there.
Mm-hmm. Maybe from this. I think this is from cover art.
Yeah, that's not the best profile I've ever seen of somebody. Yeah, I have those in floppies, and I've read about half of them. Mm-hmm. I would actually have to go back and start it again from the beginning to jog my memory about what had happened. There was another series that I think Warren Ellis did that was called Ministry of Space that I liked quite a bit.
Yeah, that was very good. Yeah, we had to wait like 5 years or something for issue number 3.
Right. Of course, by the time I got into it, number 3 was already out, so I didn't have that long wait. But I remember reading from other people, it was like, is this book ever going to come out? They were really happy when it did. I liked that series quite a bit.
Yeah, but Hellas has a good excuse because there was a time he got ill. That's why Planetary took so long to finish as well.
Right.
And by the time he got better, the artist was doing something else.
Chris Planetary ties back in the whole Woden thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
With all the different characters that were analogs of the pulp characters that we all know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be a good series to adapt to TV if there was no problem with the budget, because changing genre from episode to episode, you're going to be spending a lot of money.
Yeah, if you're going to do it right, it would be expensive to do that. That's very true.
Yeah, like the kaiju episode, unless you do that stupid CGI that they use on TV.
Yeah, imagine having to do that like they did it back in the 50s. Let's build this giant rotting rubber tubes, we use as a prop. Imagine trying to put that together.
Mm-hmm. And in the Hong Kong Cop episode, to make it believable, you do need a very good light show. With that one,
Promethea would also be very expensive to put on the screen too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Although Promethea might be good as an animated series.
Anything could be good as an animated series if it was done properly.
Mm-hmm.
I saw some footage that somebody had did. It wasn't official in any aspect, but it was a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen animated thing. The clip is like 2 or 3 minutes long, done in the art style of Kevin O'Neill. Or no, I got his name wrong.
Yeah, it's Kevin O'Neill who did.
It's Kevin O'Neill. All of a sudden, my brain backfired there. And it was really good. It's like I would pay, a decent amount of money to watch a whole movie that was this good and this quality of animation.
Hmm.
But instead, we get Star Trek Lower Decks. So.
I don't even care about new Star Trek anymore. They say, "Oh, we're bringing back Picard." I don't care.
Lower Decks is not my cup of tea. I'll put it
Mm-hmm.
nicely. It's Rick and Morty with the Star Trek name branded over top of it.
Mm. And I never watched Rick and Morty.
I have some problems with the creators of Rick and Morty. So.
Here's something else I got a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Alan Allison's Phoenix Without Ashes.
Without Ashes, yeah.
This is a very good version. Very good.
Did you read Harlan Ellison's Dream Corridor that was published by Dark Horse?
No.
Oh, they're fantastic. They're just straight comics adaptations. Harlan's input. Top quality guys drawing them. I'd recommend if anybody likes Harlan Ellison. I know me and Damien do not agree on Harlan, but if he likes Harlan Ellison stories, the Harlan Ellison's Dream Corridor is well worth picking up. And what you have there is actually pretty good too.
Yeah, I like this one very, very much, and the art style is not something that I was expecting because sometimes it doesn't.
A little cartoony.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't look up to par, but it goes well with the mood. Like
right
on these pages over here, the effects are actually pretty good. They're showing the ship from the outs parts of the ship here. Yeah, these pages are very good. Almost heavy metal like. This could have worked on Heavy Metal magazine.
Yeah, I can see that. Mastodon Comics and Music is saying hello to the both.
Oh, hey Don. What's going on? It turns out we've actually had a couple of visitors. In the beginning of the show, I thought, man, we're not on Tim's channel, we're not on Jared's channel. Nobody's gonna watch this. We can talk about whatever we want.
Scared them off with Wold Newton explanations yet, so.
And we've already had Miss Marple and Hercule Poirot and Buck Rogers.
Yes, indeed.
Here's something else. Parker.
I want to read that.
Yeah, everyone should read this.
There's two names down at the bottom of the page there.
Mm-hmm. No, this is very good, and there's a chapter here, which is like one of those info dump chapters in the novel, gotcha. Which is how they explain how the outfit works, how they operate, and they. Isn't this one or the second one? I think it's this one. Let me see if I can find it. Where is it? Come to me, my pretty. Yeah, it's this one. No, wait, it's not. It's not this one. Maybe it's in the second one. But the Darwin Cook drew that part like it was an operations manual, like a leaflet operations manual, like the security leaflet on airplanes, and it's just something that takes you. You follow the arrow here, and there's a short explanation, and it works so well.
I am of the opinion that Darwin Cook just couldn't do any wrong. Mm-hmm. He was so good at everything he did, and lighthearted stuff, the more heavier stuff like Parker. He's just so good at all of it.
Mm-hmm. I got all four novels, or all four adaptations that came out before he died, and it's a real shame. I was anxiously waiting for the next one, which is something that doesn't happen so often these days, and it's a way to show, even though this book in particular has been adapted into I don't know how many movies.
I'm trying to think, there's several made-for-TV movies of that, hasn't there?
Yeah, and the most famous is Point Blank. Yeah, and there's another more modern version with Mel Gibson.
I
So,
don't. Yeah,
yeah. So there are a few of these out there. Uh, but reading it in comic is better. It worked a lot better than any of the movies, even better than Point Blank. Okay.
yeah. I haven't really kept up with what Mel Gibson's done since Braveheart.
Yeah. Well, I saw the Passion of the Christ, and that was it.
Did he do Apocalypto? That was
Apocalypse. Yeah, he directed it.
yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of it's kind of violent, and the story's pretty basic.
Right.
Hmm. Of course, comics are always better than the movies.
Always, 99% of the time. Yeah.
Mm. Well, when movies get adapted to comics, it's different.
Yeah, I would hate to. Well, I know there's people out there, and I hate that their first introduction to Will Eisner's The Spirit was Frank Miller's movie version.
Hmm.
And then you got to explain, no, 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 ignore that. That no, go read the
Hmm.
book.
Yeah, and it's
Same
the
thing for Extraordinary Gentleman movie.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You like this? I'm like, the book is not that. The
Yeah.
book is so much better.
Hmm. The thing is, the movie is actually not bad. It's just not deep.
It's
The
okay for what it is. It's almost like an alternate world version of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Mhm. And in that regard, it kind of works.
Yeah.
I sometimes say to people that I don't actually like any comics adapted to movies, and I'm trying to think of one that I saw it in. Man, this is the best. And
I like the first Sin City movie.
well, yeah.
That one was decent.
Hmm.
Comics adapted. Well, I mean, there's a bunch of them.
I think a lot of people like Scott Pilgrim, but they probably found Scott Pilgrim the movie. They may not even know that there are actual comics.
Right, Scott Pilgrim is just something that's not doesn't really interest me much. So,
Hmm.
same thing with History of American Violence. A lot of people don't realize that was a graphic novel.
The Surrogates.
I haven't seen it.
Hmm. I saw it once. Yeah, it's a science fiction movie.
Yeah.
It's okay because it's with Bruce Willis, and I think people are trying to compare it to The Fifth Element because Bruce Willis is in it, but this doesn't have anything to do with
A
it.
lot of the Fifth Element was taken from Valerian
Yeah.
because you had Mobius and Jean Claude Messier were working on both.
Hmm. Oh. And then
Before
there's the
they're straight out of Valerian. Yeah,
mhm. And then there's the Blueberry movie.
I have not seen it.
Yeah, there's it's obviously low budget, and I think Luc Besson was trying to go for a Western spaghetti feel
Right.
because Blueberry kind of predates the as a comic kind of predates the Western spaghetti, but it already was one.
I
And
can see that. That makes sense.
but there's some point where I think Luc Besson must have tried some mescaline, uh, because all of a sudden it goes all psychedelic for no reason at all.
Maybe he's hanging around with Jodorowsky. I don't know.
Yeah, and
Blueberry movie. I'd be interested to see it just to see,
mhm.
how it
And
is.
Michael Madsen plays the bad guy, and well, Michael Madsen. He only knows how to play Michael Madsen.
Speaking of bad guys, getting back to pulp characters, did you watch? You've seen The Crow, right?
No.
Oh, you haven't seen. Fair enough. The villain in the movie was played by an actor named Michael Winscott or Wincott, and if he was about a foot taller, he was made a perfect shadow.
Hmm.
He has the nose and the facial structure and even the voice and everything for a shadow. He's just not tall enough. He would have been a great shadow.
Well, they could fake it, the height.
Yeah, I mean
It's
these days they could. Yeah, back in the
Mhm.
'90s it'd probably been harder to do it. But yeah,
Mm.
I mean if you can have oh gosh, what's his name? Mm,
Alec Baldwin.
no, not Alec Baldwin. Oh, I'm drawing a blank. Oh my God, he's in the Last Samurai. Famous short actor. I can't think. Oh God, I'm drawing a blank.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah, thank you. Tom. Yeah, you can have Tom Cruise playing. Jack Reacher, who's supposed to be like 6.5 feet tall. You know, I'm sure you could have somebody else playing the Shadow.
And the Izzard, but I don't remember the Izzard in the Blueberry movie.
He's in the.
I only saw it once. I actually went to the movies with the comic with the people from our monthly comics dinner. Uh, the organizer back when he was alive.
Right.
You like to see every comic book movie adaptation, even if most of them came from the United States and he was not a fan. The thing he liked the most was to go uh, on whenever they did a local show with artists, and there would always be somebody doing something with comics, and he would make sure that he got a copy of whatever fanzines were there. He was the king of the fanzines.
I'm not always a huge fan of comics get adapted into movies and TV. It just depends on what it is. One movie that I thought would have made a fantastic comic book was Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just straight pulp, 30s science fiction. Just put it out there, and it's like if you can't make a good comic out of that, you're not trying very hard. There's a lot of controversy right now going on with the casting of Neil Gaiman's Sandman TV series, and I'm like, I read the comic, and that's what I have burned in my brain. So it is what it is. I just hope they don't mess it up. So.
Yeah. From what I remember of seeing Gaiman stuff adapted to TV, it kind of
It depends on how many cooks are in the soup. If there's too many cooks in the soup, that's when things go wrong.
Mm-hmm. I think Neverwhere worked, and American Gods, not so much.
Oh, there was a lot of controversy going on with American Gods and the production company that was doing it. They really ticked off a lot of the actors that were working on it. Some of them left because of that. And it's funny because all the actors are saying, like, we love Neil and he's great. It's just, all the other stuff we have to deal with is too much. So.
Let me just answer. Okay.
My death is passable. Oh, let's see what you mean. I mean, the Lucian's one thing, but I mean, all the endless, they can be whatever they want them to be.
Mm. Yeah, but I'd like the idea if they were gonna do the endless, they could be whatever they want them to be. They should be somebody different in every episode.
I can see that, but then you run into confusing the hell out of the audience if they're not watching it in sequential order.
Mm-hmm.
So there's pros and cons. No matter what you do, you're not going to make everybody happy.
Mm-hmm. Is there a movie of Coraline?
Yeah, animated. Yeah, they actually did a decent job on that.
No, Coraline shouldn't be too difficult to adapt.
No, I think it's also one of those cases where there weren't so many cooks in the soup that ruined it. I don't know how closely they worked with Gaiman and McKean on that, but yeah, it's actually pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
There was also one for Mirror Mask as well, animated. The Mirror Mask was CGI animation.
Mm-hmm. What was that other thing that Gaiman did with Charles Vess?
Stardust.
Stardust, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, never read the comic, but the movie was fun. Although I'm not sure how close it is.
Comics better.
Yeah, I imagine if you have Bobby De Niro playing in the movie, Bobby De Niro is gonna want to do stuff his own way.
That's very true. I've known Charles Vest for a long time. He went to some different, they had some different things. We got to see the movie. The East Coast premiere did not take place in New York City like you think it normally would. It took place in Charles's hometown. Well, I take where he lives now, not his hometown technically. Where he lives, because I got an invite. We went, and Paramount had security there that was dressed like Secret Service agents, like you expect for the United States. Literally men in black with little earpieces and black sunglasses and everything, making sure that you weren't parroting the movie. And we saw it in a very nice little theater that had a THX sound system, had giant reverb tanks, underneath it. And it played for about 4 minutes or so, and then either they had some problems with power or whatever, and then they had to start it back again. I remember that happened, but that was fun.
Charles Vest is a person that I'd actually like to meet. He's not someone that con organizers think about bringing here, unless some editor is involved with the organization and telling them who they should ask.
Right. Charles is usually pretty busy. I mean, he's always working on some kind of project for something. Mm-hmm. But he does like the European comic festivals. He was telling me, how they treat creators there versus it's just a whole different mindset. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he likes going to Europe. He sure does.
Yeah, there was a controversy with the Barcelona Comics Festival last week because they have a yearly prize for authors, and this year they decided to give it to a blogger instead of an author, and some of the authors said that they were never going to go to that convention as long as the organizer was the same. But the thing, there's this artist Alta-Riba who was the president of the organizational committee, and he was the one who defended giving the prize to that guy because it would be like giving a prize to Jerry Bales if he were alive for all the work he did in benefiting the comics and
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
I remember when Sandman 19 won the World Fantasy Award. After it won the award, the organizers changed the rules so graphic novel could not win that award anymore.
So I don't know. I never bought something because it won an award, and right now I don't really care about the way that they select the awards that they should give. But when it comes to how comics are perceived by mainstream media by mainstream the audience in the United States, yeah, if the rest of the literary world don't care about comics, maybe they should be ignored. There are things that work well in comics, the things I've been showing here, but the majority of those literary awards are for mainstream schlock, which is set in the real world and people have real world problems.
Yeah, Sandman really knocked down the door for literary acceptance of outside of the comics industry of that type of material. It's when they got pull quotes from authors like Norman Mailer, for example, people started paying attention. But yeah, unfortunately, here in the U.S., there's just too big of a audience that still thinks comics are strictly for children only. And how many newspaper or web articles I've seen that start off with the Bath Pal, Zap, sound effects from the Batman 1966 series. That gets old after a while. So, yeah, it just seems like we're so far behind, most every other country in the world, and recognizing that there's comics for all ages.
Yeah, even in France, the French comics that show up in the United States are the more adult comics or the science fiction and fantasy. But the thing that sells more in France is still children's comics.
Okay.
And humor. Like there's a new Titeuf this year. The new Asterix is going. I'm sure, actually the new Asterix has already come out, so I don't. So if it sells like the previous one did, it's going to sell like 3.5 million copies in the first year.
Yeah, we didn't care if it got like 30,000 copies.
The thing is, I saw numbers for how much the French market sells once, and the top 50, everything sells 30,000 copies, but they're graphic novels, and they're in France with a population that is 1/5 of the population of the United States.
Yeah.
So imagine that everything in the top 50 sold 150,000, except for the top 3, which sells millions.
Yeah, and superhero publishers here would kill to have those kind of numbers. Mm-hmm. And anything even close to that. Hello to Louis Michael.
Mm-hmm. Louis Michael is he's Portuguese as well, but he uses Louis Michael on his comics. He does indie comics. Where was I? Oh yeah,
Huge publishing.
Yeah, publishing in the United States. I sometimes have a hard time trying to explain to some things to people, because the way that superheroes influence the distribution and the availability. People call anything that is not Marvel DC indie, and I've seen that applied to those My Little Pony comics that Boom puts out.
Right.
and if the property is owned by a corporation, it's not an indie comic. It sells like crap, but it's not indie.
True. Yeah, I does think there does need to be a different terminology that's used to substantiate, the big two versus.
Yeah, the thing is, if you
publishers that aren't,
Sure, but they're not mainstream publishers. Marvel and DC are not mainstream. They're just the best at the niche that they've created, which blocks everything else from having access to the larger market.
Or mainstream in terms of mainstream superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
And evidently we've confused the hell out of Terrence.
Yeah. So what the hell is going on here? Well, Tim had a family thing, Jared had a family thing, and it was just us two weirdos.
So like I said earlier, instead of getting the Caverns of Chaos, you're just getting the Stalactite of Chaos tonight.
My Little Pony stock. Yeah, for the first time we're talking about My Little Pony on a stream like this.
I have never read My Little Pony, and probably never will unless Gary Gianni ends up drawing it.
It might be interesting.
I'd buy it then. But,
mm-hmm. Well, when I was a kid, I used to read those He-Man comics, and when the He-Man comic from the US ran out, the Brazilians did more stories, and they did the same thing with Thundercats.
See, that right about that time when He-Man and Thundercats and then the animated G.I. Joe hit, that was kind of like when I was starting to grow out of that age. Oh yeah, well if we're not talking, you're just going to hear silence tonight, Terrence. So we got to.
Well, good. You should read whatever you want, and if she wants to read My Little Pony, she should.
Absolutely.
And there's a thing. Those comics like My Little Pony or those Marvel Adventures that are a more subdued version of the Marvel heroes that IDW puts out, they should not sell those comics in the direct market. They're not made for the direct market. But as long as these guys don't understand anything about what they're doing, they're not going to reach the audience that they want to reach. And I was looking at something in LinkedIn today, and I found this guy who used to work for the Renault car company's communication department. Is now the head of branding for the Michel Vaillant comic. Michel Vaillant, a European comic about auto racing.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and that's something I'd actually like to talk to the guy and see if he would be available to talk. How does a guy do marketing for a comic book brand?
Right.
That'll be interesting. Yeah, let's see that.
I don't know.
People, yeah, people have the wrong idea about Manara. Manara knows how to draw comics where everybody keeps their clothes on.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of Manara material that nobody ever saw, nobody out of Italy ever saw, which was published in the in Giornalino, which is a comic book supplement that came out in some weekly newspaper in Italy back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And Manara was doing stuff for that in the 70s. A lot of historical, episodical comics, and some literary adaptations. And I saw the art, and those were surprisingly detailed, even more so than his usual work. He was doing like 10 pages a week, which is not his usual output. That's something that kind of disappeared too. Comics in newspapers was a way to get the kids to read comics, because the dad would buy the newspaper, right. Then he would give the supplement to the kids. We had something in Portugal called Chico Omelette. Mind the Comics probably remembers. And it was a mix of comic strips and educational info for kids aged 6 to 10, and yeah, and it was very interesting. It came out just as I was that age, and I used to love going through it. Right. There was even an adventure strip that looked out of place in that newspaper supplement called Rackham, and it was kind of a science fantasy thing. And never saw it again. I don't know. I don't even remember who created it, and I don't. There's never been an album of it. I'd like to see that one republished. And I remember it being. This doesn't have anything to do. The other strips were for kids, but I was impressed by it. Because it came out in the same newspaper that the daily strips were Winnie the Pooh, Hagar the Horrible, right. The Phantom, and the British strip called Garth. And that thing actually had some nudity in the daily newspaper.
Yeah. I would be fairly confident saying most Americans have never seen Garth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even a few British don't remember it. That's yeah, that's a good way. Not every comic shop is smart enough to sell to kids. Yeah. Even a lot of Brits don't know what Garth is because it came out in the newspaper. It didn't come out in even those that remember Beano and Dennis. Mm. They don't remember Garth. It started in the 40s. It reached its apex of popularity in the 60s and 70s, and then it started dying out in the mid 80s. I think the last ones were published around 92. It went through a lot of creators with completely different styles. You look at the things from the original strips, and the guy that was drawing in the 80s, it was a complete 180. It's like you replace I don't know. You replace Sid Shores with with Bill Sienkiewicz.
Slightly different art styles there. Slightly different. It's interesting you're talking about British comics too. I don't think most Americans would recognize any British comics to any degree. I mean, even if you told them, most Americans probably would recognize Judge Dredd, but I bet they wouldn't know it was from England.
I thought being from England was one of its selling points.
Fair enough, but I mean, people may have seen the movie and they may know the character's name, but they probably don't know much about the character itself. And I'm sure most of them have never seen the actual comics. I mean, even though in the early to mid '80s, 2000 AD, kind of got a little popular, for certain things. Alan Moore was big, but outside of, unless you lived in a large media market like New York or LA, you probably weren't exposed to it.
Yeah, there's very little material apart from Judge Dredd that I've heard of. So there's from 2000 AD and its predecessor, I think it was called Star-Lord magazine. Okay, so there's Strontium Dog, which that one is famous. And then Zenith by Grant Morrison and Steve Yoel. I actually have a Brazilian version of that.
The vast majority of Americans wouldn't even recognize Dan Dare, which is a British institution.
Yeah, and I have DR and Quinch, which I bought because of the Alan Davies.
I wanted to read that. I've never read it, but always just from seeing the static images, it always looked like I need to read that these days.
Yeah,
the best way to it's supposed to be comical. I'm in.
Yeah, the best way to describe it is irreverent. It's actually quite fun. I think it's a much better read than Alan Moore's Future Shocks. I also have a trade of that.
Gotcha.
But
the rest, I must be willing, other than comics fans, I would almost be willing to say that most Americans have probably heard of movies that have been made from Moore's works, like From Hell and V for Vendetta. I bet you the average American that's not a comics fan doesn't even know that Alan Moore is British. Right. I may be wrong, but
or they might not even know who Alan Moore is.
Well, that's true too. I mean, they've heard of The Watchmen, but but yeah, you're right.
Because Alan Moore doesn't like his name associated with the movies.
Well, there's good reasons for that.
Which goes beyond the movies, but but in a way, kind of gave up the fight to get any money, any compensation from all that work.
One thing I thought was very good of him to do is he did take some of the, maybe if not all of it in some cases, of the royalties and whatnot, and distributed amongst the people that actually worked on the books.
Although apparently he's not talking to Dave Gibbons anymore.
He's not talking to Steve Bissett anymore either, and Steve still doesn't know why.
Yeah, that's
maybe he did an Alex Toth on people. I'm not sure. Have down with Alex Toth, if you just rubbed him the wrong way, that was it. He would just ghost you. So.
Well, when he created his own snake god, you bet that his brain was not functioning completely 100%.
Who knows? Maybe he's doing it. He may be like Dennis Rodman in basketball. He may be just doing it to mess with people's heads. You're not really sure. I mean, at least I don't know.
Yeah, we once had an Alan Moore exhibit here in Portugal, and there were rumors that Alan Moore was going to come. Of course, he didn't. Yeah. But we got a bunch of people that worked with him. Kevin O'Neill came.
Right.
So did David Lloyd came. I actually interviewed the both of them. I think I still have the interview somewhere in 2 computers ago. And Oscar Zarate came. And one of the guys who was a colorist of his, he also came. They said Melinda Gebby was supposed to come, but I don't think she did.
Wasn't Oscar Zarate also part of the Big Numbers?
Don't remember. I think he worked on more on something else.
seems like some file stuck at the back of my brain when you said Oscar Wilde. The big numbers popped up. I'm not sure what.
Mhm. That was actually an interesting one. And we have a guy here in the. He used to do comics, although right now is only a novelist, and he has very interested in the occult, and he has a big beard, and he likes to wear a large hat. So he shaved his beard around that time because he was afraid people were going to think he was Alan Moore.
Alan Moore. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
if I
I
should,
say it sounds a lot like Alan Moore, which is described.
yeah, if I showed you his picture, I think you might say, oh, it kind of does look like Alan Moore. Not sure if you can find a picture of him right now. Maybe I can try to look for it on Facebook later.
Gotcha.
But he has a few interesting comics and novels where he goes for the Portuguese Imaginarium across the centuries. Even stuff that nobody else remembers got lost in the through the sands of time, and
We're
people
talking
don't.
about stuff going back in the medieval era.
Yeah, and even further before.
Well,
He managed to integrate the Neanderthal population that lived in an area where Lisbon is now into a story about one of our greatest novelists of the 20th century, where he uses the character from the most famous character associated with that novelist as a sort of avatar figure.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I know his novels sell well in Poland, but I'm not sure if they're available in English anywhere.
It's hard to say.
Yeah. I bet that getting foreign authors published in the U.S.
Yeah,
even in novels
the
probably is
most
probably.
successful. Well, I don't keep up with novel publication like I used to. But the most successful one I can think of recently is I don't remember the author's name, but he's a Chinese science fiction author.
Mm.
And he wrote a book called The Three Body Problem. And it was actually pretty well received here in the U.S. Once it was translated in English. He's written a few others after that, but unfortunately, I don't remember the fellow's name. That's the last time I can really remember there was a buzz about a foreign author here. Now, granted, I don't follow publishing for other genres like romance novels and.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like if you can be successful writing anything in young adult young teen audience these days, you can make some serious money there.
Yeah, the best you can get of foreigners is if they're British and they do Harry Potter.
Yeah, I mean that's
You can't even get Perry Rodan to be continuously published.
Well, I mean Perry Rodan's not really continuous published anywhere outside of Germany.
Yeah, I think I saw some French ones a few years ago.
There are a few, but what I'm saying is they're not ongoing projects that have been going back to the beginning and publishing the majority of Perry Rodan.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy. What was it? I was watching another video. A friend of mine does a Star Trek related video, and this guy got on there just complaining about how he hated that everybody in the English language market didn't know anything about Perry Rodan. And I'm like the one guy here says, I know who Perry Rodan is. I get it. I know what's going on. And he got all pissed off because nobody knew who Perry Rodan was. And everybody else was like, who the hell's Perry Rodan?
Yeah.
Which just made him even worse. Yeah. Gore, I actually don't know which artist.
No, it's a friend. No, I was talking. The author I was talking about was Aquilino Ribeiro. Yeah, I don't think he's ever been published in English. I'm sure he's been published in French, but he's not very famous. He was famous here for a while, around the 1950s, and there's even an animated series, silent 5-minute shorts that were made in the 1980s. And it's the Romance of the Fox, and it's about the fox as a trickster character, And that's the thing that my friend kind of adapted, because since the fox is a trickster and keeps appearing as an avatar to its author, and then he starts using the history of Portugal going back to prehistoric ages.
It
And
almost reminds me of the Nancy stories where he's a spider, to and then European market, the equivalent of fox, trickster characters, traditionally a fox. Interesting.
yeah, I wonder if when they created Zorro, what was the guy's name?
Oh boy, it'll come to me right after we get done. I don't remember the character's name. I'm sorry, the creator's name, rather. Storyteller.
Yeah, but I wonder if he was familiar with the idea that Latins might think that the fox is a trickster character. Although that's also present in French, the creature of Reynard.
Right. You're talking about authors. Isabel Allende actually wrote a treatment of Zorro, of the history of Zorro, and that got published here in the English market too.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, well-known, respected, author. It's not known for genre stuff. Like Isabel Allende is doing a Zorro story. That's awesome.
Is Arturo Perez Reverte well known in the U.S.?
Not to me.
I think Gore Vidal might know who he is.
No.
He did Captain Alatriste. And there's even a Spanish movie with and who did the Captain Alatriste movie? Alatriste movie. Antonella. Yeah, where is it? Oh yeah, Viggo Mortensen plays the main character.
Okay.
Yeah, because right, here it is. Yeah, because Viggo Mortensen lived in Spain in his youth, so he speaks Spanish without an accent. And the movie's made in Spain, and it's Viggo Mortensen. I think they did it for international audiences, so they could pick up the movie. Even European movies have a hard time moving between countries nowadays because the Hollywood machine just dumps everything everywhere.
Sure. And I'm sure if you're a director and you're looking, for Viggo, it's like, oh, he can ride a horse. We'll cast him.
And now I just got to remember, how many people know that Planet of the Apes came from France?
Me. Yeah, most Americans don't know that. I'm sure probably most people in the world probably don't know that.
Sure, I mean they probably the first time Planet of the Apes got famous was with the original movie in the 60s.
Yeah, I mean the same thing with 12 Monkeys. Most people don't know that came from a French story called La Jetée.
I didn't know that. I saw I read an interview with Viggo Mortensen once, because he was being interviewed about his photography work.
Right.
And but he manages to move around, and people don't notice it's him. And the guy who interviewed him took him back to the airport after the interview, and somebody in security said you can go. Okay, you can go further without the ticket, because the journalist didn't have a ticket to go past airport security. Oh, it's okay. I'm a journalist. I came to interview this person, and the security guy looked at Viggo Mortensen and said, "Why, are you famous?" He said, "No."
Yeah, you get you think if you with as much crap as actors go through on a basis like that, interacting with the public, going out and being mobbed by paparazzi and fans, it's got to be a nice thing when you're not recognized.
Yeah.
We were just talking about a history of violence.
Yeah.
Most
Hmm.
people don't recognize it was adapted from a graphic
Hmm.
novel.
Yeah. If you guys want to go back to the beginning after we're done, I showed a few comics, and we talked a little bit about literary adaptations into comics, and then comics adaptations into other medium,
Right.
and we talked about the Wold Newton universe as well.
Yeah, if the Will Newton stuff didn't scare you off, then probably nothing else we're going to talk about will. So.
Shared universes. It's something that you really only see in the USA. I guess you can see it in other places, but the concept was popularized by the United States because it
Uh,
didn't really exist until the Marvel Universe. When you think about stuff that had at least spin-offs,
well, technically, Green Hornet was a spinoff of Lone Ranger,
right?
although most people don't know.
Hmm.
They don't
Well,
make the connection obvious.
right, and of course they don't interact because they're in different time periods.
Right, exactly.
Hmm.
I
But
just
the
I
idea,
don't know if there are any manga shared universe thing.
mhm,
I mean, granted that's out of my wheelhouse.
yeah, because even that thing I talked about earlier, the unofficial Arsène Lupin Sherlock Holmes crossover,
Hmm.
that was very rare, and it was made without authorization from Arthur Conan Doyle's agents.
Right.
So it wasn't something that happened very often. Uh, yeah, it might have started with the shared universe. Might have started with the Marvel universe, and before that,
I'd have to think about that.
yeah, I don't. It kind of. I say this, and it feels wrong even as I say it,
Well,
but it's
there's
kind of hard to think of
there's
something.
some other authors that contributed to H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos.
Hmm.
August Derleth was a good example of that, but it wasn't exactly widespread, nor was it well known at the time
Yeah,
either. And
yeah.
it certainly wasn't,
Yeah, there's Cole appearing in a Brand McMorn story.
you know. So it certainly wasn't as widespread as what we think about, universe crossovers these days. Movies and other medium whatnot.
Hmm.
Um, Boy, that's a good one. I don't know. I'm sure there was probably some science fiction universes that crossed over and literary before that.
Hmm. Yeah,
New comic
Conan
shop
Doyle.
coming down the street. Must be just terrible.
Hmm. Well, we have the Man in the Iron Mask as a sequel. It's a sequel. It's not a shared universe thing.
Mm-hmm.
And even Conan Doyle never thought about crossing over his characters.
Well, same thing with Mysterious Island and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Selling one five
I
thousand
wonder.
dollar book.
Yeah, I wonder if Gore has as many comic shops within a decent distance as Damien does.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's true. There was the known space stuff Larry Niven did. The Kazinti factored into that.
Mhm. Yeah, I wasn't familiar. I'm not very familiar with Larry Niven. Not even there's a collection of science fiction novels that was published here between the 1950s and the 1990s. There are over 500 titles, and Larry Niven was not a name that you saw often in that series. And I don't think I've ever read a Larry Niven book.
If you want to start with Larry Niven, I'd recommend Ringworld to start with.
Mm.
It's a good starting place. First cinematic shared universe. Hmm.
Might be.
Maybe. I'm not sure. I'm trying to think. There was something before that.
Mm.
Don't know. It's probably very well way being. I'm not really
Yeah,
sure.
this requires further investigation.
Yes. It requires
Look for us in future episodes of the Cavern of Chaos to answer this question.
After we get done, we'll Google it and see.
Yeah. Yeah, I've Googled a couple of things since we started, but it's not a good idea to spend a lot of time on Google with just two people.
Right. I'm trying to think. Cinematic shared universe before Universal Studios.
Yeah, I really don't.
Well, there weren't really that many movies in existence compared to what there are now, but Tarzan was just never shared with another universe, so to speak. It may be.
It's always Bogart always plays the same character.
Pretty much.
It's always Bogey. Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, even in the westerns, you don't see characters appearing. You think it would be easy to have the westerns appearing together,
Right.
Mm-hmm. Of course, Tarzan Goes to Pellucidar.
I don't think there was a movie of that, though, was there?
No, there wasn't. We talked about it a few episodes ago on Tim's channel.
That would make a decent movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or at least a TV series, because the Shadowline has the 3 different character sets. You have Dr. Zero, Powerline, and what was the other one?
St. George.
St. George, yeah. And what is movies shared divine? I don't.
And Tapu.
So yeah, but even so, yeah, shared universes are really something that's fairly modern, even if you count the Argonauts. The Argonauts was the first thing where you have characters from different myths interacting, but it's not something that was that common. Right. And of course, Ivanhoe integrated Robin Hood into a literary universe.
Yeah, that's true too.
Well, I have a Tarzan Carson of Venus here. Where's that?
You just have to say the right thing, Terrence. You can get a chuckle out of me depending on what the subject matter is.
There's a Tarzan Carson of Venus.
Yeah, I have all those in floppies. I don't have the trade.
Live action. I want to see how the hell they're going to do Terror with all the spikes coming out of his face.
I really don't have an opinion one way or the other.
No. And can you imagine the guy chopping parts out of dead people so he can attach them to his own body? You can't show that on network TV.
Not without some serious edits. Yeah. So the new After book is just brand new material, right?
Yeah, everything is brand new. Even Uderzo is dead now, but he appointed successors to continue doing his work. You see that a lot in successful series that have been going on for decades. Eventually, the original author either dies or retires, and they appoint somebody to replace them.
I know there was one volume of Valerian that was done after Messier retired. Mm-hmm. Kind of had like a semi-manga-esque influence to it.
Yeah. And all of Jean Van Amme's stuff, 13 Largo Winch, somebody else is working on new volumes, because Jean Van Amme is 85, I think. But the series are still successful enough that they warrant further volumes by the publisher, so they keep on doing it. As long as they make money, they'll keep on doing it.
Go ahead.
The only thing that is not allowed new stories, it's Tintin, because supposedly Hergé said that he didn't want any more stories after he died. I don't actually believe that. I think the executor of his estate said that, and since the guy moved in with the widow after Hergé died, and the widow was the second wife and was much younger than Hergé,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of shenanigans with the way that they handle especially because they tried to get the publisher to stop publishing Tintin comics. But even Hergé had sold the rights for Casterman to continue publishing the old stories.
Right.
But the merchandising is controlled by the widow and her lover. So shenanigans. It's not everything related to Marvel and DC stealing stuff from Jack Kirby or and Jerry Siegel. Yeah, they would. They would if they did a new Tintin.
They break the bank everywhere except the United States.
Yeah, yeah. I think the Linclair style would be very hard to swallow, especially nowadays.
I like that kind of style, but
Yeah.
I'm an outlier here. I don't know anything at all about Sweet Tooth other than it's a title.
Yeah, they have a TV series out of that. I don't know what. I didn't know it already come out. But since all of that stuff is coming out through subscription services, I just don't pay attention. I don't subscribe to Netflix or Disney Plus or anything like that.
I don't remember. There's a newer superhero title, and I can't remember which one it was, that Netflix just canceled right after the first season because it was too expensive.
Jupiter's Legacy.
Yeah, that's a.
Although supposedly Mark Miller is getting harder to negotiate with, there are some rumors.
Yeah, it's certainly possible.
I actually watched the Power Show, which was on PlayStation or something, but they showed it on TV here, on regular TV, and I watched all the episodes, and it was really, really boring.
I haven't watched any of them.
Most of the stuff they do for TV is either very boring or only gets good by the time the series is ready to be canceled, like Arrow.
Right.
Or Smallville. Smallville had 10 seasons, and it's only good from season 6.
Gotcha.
And Flash never interested me. Arrow got better by 3, 4, but then I think it jumped the shark after with 7. And they still had 8. Which is where it's visually very Linclair. I guess you can call it that.
Yeah, I can see that. He had an art style that at times, not all the time, at times it reminds me a little bit of Seth Fisher, but with a much, much thinner line weight.
Mm.
Except Seth Fisher's stories wouldn't depress the hell out of you like Chris Ware's do. It's like, if you're feeling bad about yourself, don't read a Chris Ware story. You wait till you're in a better mood.
Yeah, there's a friend of mine who says that. It says I have to be in a really good mood to read Chris Ware stories, otherwise I'm going to kill myself.
I can see that.
Of course, he has a very sarcastic sense of humor, so I don't see that. He likes everything unless he feels like not liking it. One day we'll defend something, the next day we'll criticize it as trash.
It's funny because, I made an analogy once. I have to be in a certain mood to watch Doctor Who. And I don't dislike Doctor Who at all, but literally, I haven't been in that mood in over 10 years now. Something about it, just for whatever reason, like when it hits me, I watch Doctor Who, and then After that, like, I can wait till something else happens. The last thing I remember seeing Gillian Anderson in was American Gods, and then she left it.
Although the fact that she's appearing on a BBC series is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's very rare that BBC hires Americans to appear on their shows. Well, Panini still have the rights for the majority of markets outside the United States, although they don't publish in every market. They publish directly if they can make money. If they feel they can make money directly. If they don't, they'll license, farm out whatever they can.
And Terrence just brought up a good point. TV rarely does anything for me anymore, to be honest. Like, there's all this hubbub going on about the No Game and Sandman series. And the reason it doesn't really, I'm not head over heels about it, is not for any of the casting, which people are bitching up one side down the other. It's like, it's like The Watchmen. It was in the perfect medium for it, which was in comics. There's things you can do in comics that don't necessarily translate well into good TV. It's like,
Yeah, we're breaking up the band.
Like the Blues Brothers. We're getting the band back together.
Yeah, they had stuff, so they couldn't make it.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised that all of you showed up, because I hadn't done anything on my channel for over a year, so I thought that everybody had unsubscribed or was just going to ignore.
Yeah.
Although I am getting thirsty. This is the spin-off show. Shared universe. Yeah. Then we're gonna have a crossover with NCIS.
I hope not. Can I just write myself out of that episode?
Yeah. You can do that like Scott Kahn. He keeps missing episodes. Yeah. Have you ever read Valiant Comics?
Yeah.
I haven't. It's one of the things that I've never read.
I've never read any Valiant Comics. I know Tim is a big fan of them, but I've never read any of them. Although I will say, if I was going to read one of them, well, two of them, it probably would be Dr. Solar and Magnus Robot Fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I'm semi-familiar with those characters before that. And also Barry Windsor-Smith did some art for some of them.
I think I'd be interested in trying Quantum and Woody.
I had read good things about Quantum and Woody, but I know it by reputation.
Because it was Christopher Priest. Christopher Priest had an interesting reputation 20 years ago, because people believed that he had a lot of fans. People in the news groups loved Christopher Priest's writing, but everyone believed that he had the touch of death.
What did Christopher Priest do before the Valiant stuff?
Christopher Priest. Well, he was involved for a while with Milestone, but he ended up not writing for them. I think it was the one that did something called Zero with an X. I think that was it.
Zombie?
At DC. No. It wasn't. It ended up not being part of the Milestone universe. It was called Zero with an X.
Gotcha.
And before that, he was called Jim Owsley.
I saw something the other day that some of the Milestone properties are going to start back up.
Yeah, but I think people aren't interested anymore. There have been so many attempts to bring Milestone back, and the only thing that had any mainstream success was Static Shock, but they want to do Static Shock now more urban or something. And one of the things that was good about Static Shock was that it was hopeful. It was a kid got superpowers and he enjoyed it.
Gotcha. Upstairs, downstairs. Boy, that's one I haven't heard of in a while.
Oh, I used to when I was a kid. I loved Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister and Allo Allo.
I remember when I was a kid, I was watching Masterpiece Theater on PBS.
Mm.
I didn't know what was going on. I was just watching it. And I remember my grandfather came in the room, asked me, he's like, "What are you watching?" I'm like, "It's called Masterpiece Theater." He's like, "Is it any good?" I'm like, "I have no idea. I'm just sitting there watching it. I don't know if it's good or not." I just thought it's something rather odd for like a 5-year-old to be watching at the time. Okay, so he did some other work at
Who's the
DC.
one who did Justice League Task Force? Okay, yeah, yeah. Now that you mention, I do remember him doing Ray. Yeah, and now, yeah, the priest was briefly involved with Milestone, but it was not part of it beyond the initial plans.
I don't remember anything at all about Ray except I can see the cover, like the first issue, burned into my brain from the house ads they had for it.
Hmm. Because I think I kind of lost track of Owsley when he changed his name, because he did stuff with Spider-Man. He did King Conan,
Mm-hmm.
and he was generally funny. That he used to write stuff for Crazy Magazine before he became an editor.
I remember Crazy.
Hmm.
Gore. I was hoping that there's going to be an English language translation of that Aragonis interview because there is. I'd really like to see that. Oh yeah,
Actually,
Sergio was not a fan of finding out that he gave a sketch at somebody convention and the person turns around and flips it on eBay. That
yeah.
ticked him off quite a bit actually.
Hmm.
So that was the Zombie was the book I was thinking it began with
Yeah,
letter
yeah,
X.
yeah. Hardware was interesting. A friend of mine liked Hardware. Blood Syndicate was kind of hard to swallow because of the main characters were criminals, and there was something else that a friend of mine liked. Cobalt, I think that was the name.
Interesting.
Hmm. And I remember the crossover with the DC, the Superman, when Superman and the Milestone characters had a crossover called Worlds Collide. That was fun.
Yeah, I don't know that
There
one.
was a guy who was a postman, and he went when he went to bed. He woke up in the other dimension. Yeah.
I hate it when that happens.
Huh, interesting that they go for it, because I remember people talking about it many years ago, and they said that Blood Syndicate was the one that they didn't like from the famous ones.
Well, it's also funny how something is not very popular for a long time. Then 20, 30 years later, all of a sudden, for whatever reason, it pops up and everybody just jumps on it. It gets hot it's like, why? It's just strange how things work
Yeah.
sometimes.
I think these things get hot, but the way that DC does promotion for their comics, they might get a good release for their number ones, and then it's going to go down pretty fast because that's the way people react to these things.
Gore said that interview with Sergio is available in closed captioning. Now, when I tried looking at it the other day, it wasn't. But I'm glad it is now. And I knew that he'd worked with Jodorowsky and Marcel Marceau doing pantomiming. And his father worked in the movie industry in Mexico. So when he was a kid, he actually was like a stand-in stunt double for Irish McCalla, of all people. You know.
This is from what?
Don't know.
Well, Werewolf, explain it to us. Mm. Interesting.
I can't even remember the last time I read a mainstream superhero team book.
That's the stuff that I always wanted to read because there were more characters. Nowadays, I
Well, it
I
just seems
really have no
like
patience.
if you got teams together, their collective IQ dropped about 60 points.
Yeah.
And if Superman was, half as smart as Batman was, he'd be dangerous.
Definitely. There's a meme with Batman flying the Justice League's plane, and everybody has their seatbelts on. And the meme is, you can tell Batman's in charge because the flyers are all inside the plane, and the invulnerable guys all have seatbelts on.
So Dominic brings up, what are your favorite comic book runs of all time? Oh God, that's a tough
Oh,
question.
yeah.
Um, Recently, in the past 20 years or so, I'd have to say Hellboy.
Hmm.
Hellboy. Well, for me, Hellboy, Usagi Yojimbo, Concrete,
John John Sable Freelance.
Sandman. Uh,
Transmetropolitan.
I have not read Transmetropolitan. I want to, but I haven't read it yet. I haven't read Preacher either.
I've never finished Preacher.
I liked what Planetary I've read, but I haven't finished it yet.
I've
Uh,
read I've reread Planetary only once. The thing with Planetary, I reread the first three trades many times, but the fourth one only once because it came out a decade after the other ones.
Gotcha.
And Scalped. Here's the thing, I love Scalped, and it turned me on to Jason Aaron. Then Jason Aaron started working on superheroes, and now I hate Jason Aaron.
Well, it's the same thing that happened with Brian Michael Bendis too, because I remember my Brian Bendis when he did Jinxed and what was the other detective
The
series he worked on?
Goldfish and
Yeah,
Torso.
Redfish. Yeah, and he started doing superhero stuff, and then after that, I haven't read
Hmm.
anything he's done.
No, there's no patience. Uh, I I, ne- I never liked his Avengers. Never. They didn't act like the Avengers were supposed to. Although at the time, Powers was a good read because
Gotcha.
it was creator owned, I guess.
And also I loved Tom Strong from Alan Moore. He's
Hmm.
great.
Yeah, people were more interested in Promethea back then, but to me, Tom Strong was the best.
Yes, I didn't really get into Tom Strong until after it was already 99% of it was already published.
Mm.
Then years later, I'm reading it. It's like, oh my God, where was I? This is great, And now I want more of it, and it's not probably not going to happen. So
And Phone Panels is here too. Everybody's here, man.
gotcha. I was trying to think, favorite runs of all time. Boy, that's tough. The ones I mentioned, Grew.
Hmm.
Um, Oof, boy, I don't know. Give me a couple days, and I'll probably come up with a long list of stuff.
in one that.
Luther Arkwright was pretty good.
Hmm. Although it's pretty much a closed series. There are only 2 volumes.
Yeah.
Running out of water.
And actually, it's funny because I actually follow probably more creators than actual ongoing titles that other people work on as well. So it's kind of hard to say.
Well, so the way we read comics over here, you kind of had to keep up. As long as you kept buying the same titles, you were always going to keep up with the characters even after there were changes in the creative teams. And sometimes I would get confused because I always noticed when John Byrne left the book, and I was like, huh? Why did John Byrne leave?
Well, a lot of the
I did.
books I'm reading were also creator-owned books too, so you're not going to have that problem. Oh, Bone. What the hell was I thinking? Bone was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Castle Waiting was good.
I wanted to read that. I never did.
It's hard to find, and I'd be interested to see if she ever gets back to doing it on a regular basis again. I don't think she will, but I could be wrong.
And I was going to say American Flag, but that's not true. American Flag is good in the beginning, and then when Chaykin is not doing it, it kind of drops off in quality.
I've never read any of American Flag. I know it by reputation, but not actual by reading it.
I never read Saber's ongoing series. I only have the graphic novel.
Mm-hmm. So Dominic just listed a bunch of things that he liked.
Yeah. Pairs and Music's Avengers was fun.
As far as superhero stuff goes, I will have to say Astro City. Kurt Busiek is one of very few writers that made me care about superheroes again. And also the New Frontier series that Darwin Cook.
Yeah, Rising Stars. Well, I think the JMS didn't actually finish it, which is something that he does. It kind of fizzles out.
Yeah, it's funny because when I think JMS, I don't even think of comics. I think of Babylon 5.
Mm-hmm. There was something that I liked, Midnight Nation, which was not a theme that I would usually be interested in, but the story is pretty easy to follow.
There was a funny story I remember. Somebody did an interview with Straczynski one time. Earlier in his career, he's having a hard time getting stuff published. And he went to Harlan Ellison. He's like, "How do I become more successful?" And Harlan just said, "Stop writing crap." And he wasn't directing it at him individually. He just said, "Start writing good stuff, and it will sell." And he took his advice, and that's when he started selling.
Yes, we should. Yeah. Let's talk about your favorite GCD.
I don't actually have any slab books. Not a one.
Yeah. If I ever got a slab, I would take it out of the slab.
I will buy Mylar. I won't buy regular bags anymore. I buy Mylar.
Slab. And then thousands of speculators across the world would wail as I took it out.
I mean, that's the reason I don't have any slab books, is I don't want to read them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, granted, if I came across a copy of like Detective 27 in an attic somewhere, I'd probably get it slabbed and sell it.
Sure. Yeah, because if I want to read the first issues of Action Comics, there's actually a very hardcover volumes that I can buy, and the Action Comics stories are in there.
Yeah.
Although I suppose that people want to have Zatara's first appearance, or the Vigilante's first appearance, are out of luck because there's a guy with a cape in that comic that make its price go up.
And Gore just brought up Cerebus. I've only read maybe 20% of Cerebus, I would guess.
There's another one that I never got around to starting.
It's all the early stuff. So. I have a lot of concrete books from Dark Horse, but none of them are slabbed. So.
That's like books in dust. The dust protects the books.
Did Gerhard ever do any comics work again after he finished on Cerebus?
I don't think so.
I just wondered.
It wasn't his actually primary means of expression, was it? Doing comics, Gerhard.
I don't know what else he did. I'm not really sure. I'm not educated on him, so I don't know.
Maybe Terrence knows.
Possibly. He doesn't know either. So there we go.
Yeah. That would actually be the interesting thing. No, instead of doing a book on Dave Sim, they should do a book on Gerhard.
Interesting.
No.
Is there really enough? What's the word I'm looking for? Is there a demand outside of the Cerebus market to have a book on Gerhard?
Maybe.
Okay. I'm looking at it from a business perspective, not from a
you want it. No, we don't. Yeah, Dark World's Greatest Comics. He kind of never
I wasn't.
solidified.
I read a few of them, but I wasn't impressed with them.
Yeah, I have a couple of ghost stories, but I think they're crossovers.
Yeah,
A friend of mine
probably
has
was the better
friend,
title out of all that stuff.
yeah, a friend of mine wanted to buy X
It's just
a few years ago.
mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, maybe it is. Barbed Wire is only famous because of the movie.
Right. And Ghost, I say, is probably best known for the covers that Adam Hughes did, and then they also did a Ghost Hellboy crossover.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the one I read. It's not me that has it; it's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
But the Dark Horse superhero line, yeah, they were not cut out to publish superheroes. The with the way that their catalog was built,
Right.
and
And I think there's an experiment coming with another new superhero universe from Dark Horse too, and it doesn't do anything for me. Strangers in Paradise was good too.
yeah, Stray Bullets only have the first volume. The most about comics history, the mafia connections.
It's funny you said that. Granted, I hate movies about the mafia. I don't know, organized crime just doesn't do anything for me, storytelling wise. But there are sure a hell of a lot of mafia stories going on with comics publishing. You're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe that's the TV series that they should do. Hey Kids Comics.
Way too cynical.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Realistic, mind you. You know, there's a reason for that cynicism. But,
Yeah. And then everybody's gonna point. That's the Stan Lee character. That asshole over there.
I mean, really, the title for that should be "Hey Adults, These Are What Kids Comics Were Actually Like." You know, the kids are like, "What the hell is everybody talking about? We're confused." You know.
Mm. Yeah. People have no idea. People. Oh, we created these superheroes with lots of love for all children to read. No. And besides, the real reason why the comics got published was so that they could push paper.
Yeah.
They made money from printing those things, not from selling them.
Sure. Panels brings up a good point about Dark Horse's licensed books. The earlier ones were really well done. Not only Star Wars, but also the first Alien series was great. The Conan stuff they did at the beginning was fantastic.
The Tarzan stuff. The Tarzan stuff. It's not something that people remember. But if you pick up a Dark Horse Tarzan, it's a very good read.
Yeah.
And not what you'd expect from Tarzan, but it's
I think
still a good read nonetheless.
The only crossover they never had was, you know, Tor loves Betty Page. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
Terrence, here's the question about being a good or bad Canadian. Do you like Rush? Jared probably doesn't even know who Rush is. Would be my guess.
Mm-hmm. Actually, let Terrence. How do you feel about Tiga? Tiga is an electro producer and singer from Montreal. He's more famous in Berlin than he is in Canada, I think.
Terrence, how can you not like Rush? Oh man, you guys are killing me.
You are one bad Canadian. Like next, you'll tell us that you don't like poutine.
You know, the only bad food I had when I was in Canada was a Canadian Hershey bar. I don't know what they did to it, but boy, it is not. You know, everybody complains about American chocolate is crap compared to Swiss chocolate and European chocolate. Canadian Hershey bars are terrible. I don't know what they did to them, how they process them differently, but they were not good. don't have any of the John Paul Leon stuff. Dark Horse Presents was good.
Hmm.
They had some pretty good creators that would write in every time, like Mobius. Every once in a blue moon would do something for them.
Yeah, Terrence once showed his collection of Cheval Noir.
Yeah. Oh, there's a couple Cheval Noir episodes. Good grief, issues that had Mike Kaluta covers are absolutely gorgeous. And the other thing that struck me when I was in Canada too, if you go to a KFC in Canada, they
Hmm.
don't carry mashed potatoes. And as an American, I'm like, what do you mean you don't have mashed potatoes? What the hell? No, they weren't on the menu.
We don't have mashed potatoes on KFC.
What?
Nobody eats mashed potatoes with chicken.
Everybody in America eats mashed potatoes with chicken. Mashed potatoes and gravy and chicken is like a.
Besides, if you're a functioning adult and you have all your teeth, why would you eat mashed potatoes?
Because they taste good.
No, they don't.
Do
You
you eat
need lots and lots of Tabasco sauce to make it taste good.
Do you eat sauerkraut?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree on mashed potatoes and sauerkraut then.
I eat snails, man, and octopus. We've already established that.
Yeah, octopus are way too intelligent for people to be eating.
But they would eat you if they could.
Squid more so. Did you know? I saw something a couple years ago. Scientists estimate now there's more squid biomass in the world than there are people.
Hmm.
So there's got to be some awfully big squid out there.
There are.
Yeah.
People didn't believe that the giant squid existed until they finally started washing ashore, which
Yeah,
was which was normal.
yeah. That's something I talked about with William Scott when we were talking to each other. He's like, who would have imagined, like when I was a kid, that I was going to see video footage of a healthy adult giant squid at its natural depth in my lifetime? You know,
I think I started the mashed potato war.
and mashed potatoes are good, especially with brown gravy. Oh man, gained 5 pounds just thinking about those.
I prefer rice
I like rice too.
with anything. Anything goes good with rice.
I was trying to think. Gus brought up fried octopus. I don't know how the octopus I had was prepared. I'm not really sure. I just remember it seemed like you were chewing on it for 5 days and it would never quite go away. It was like kind of like a crab flavored gummy bear that just would not disintegrate. Yeah.
This is becoming a cooking show.
Yeah. Yeah, we could talk about food all day. Absolutely.
I'm gonna go hungry in a while, and it's past 1 o'clock, and with
Well,
the COVID
you and
COVID
I
restrictions,
talked about
McDonald's is closed.
before, so yeah.
I had sardines today. They were a little on the dry side. Not enough natural juices.
How do they normally package them there?
We don't package them. We buy them from the fish market.
Dry or?
No. They get brought over in the
Straight
fishing
from the
ship.
straight from the market. Okay.
Yeah, they're in ice, over the stone, and you pick them up, put them in a bag, bring them home, and you barbecue them.
Right. See, the vast majority of them here, in little cans that you have to open. So. But I do like sardines, but I'm not a fan of anchovies. They're way too salty for me.
Anchovies aren't very popular here, although we do have them canned.
Yeah, I mean anchovies here are generally considered to be a pizza topping. So.
Mm-hmm. We have a bunch of varieties of fish that people in other countries have never heard of.
Oh, I'm sure. Plus, there's certain categories of fish here that are renamed for marketing purposes that aren't really indicative of what the species of fish actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Like tilapia, not necessarily. It could be any one of about 7 different species that they package up and throw together.
Hmm. Yeah, you do the same with mackerel.
Yeah.
Mackerel is actually
Mhm.
at least two different species, and one of those species gets divided into several subspecies.
Must admit, I do like me some salmon. Salmon's really good.
But your salmon gets artificial coloring.
It can, yeah, depending on where you get it from.
If it's from Argentina, it gets coloring. The one we eat more in Europe is from Norway.
Gotcha. I've had salmon straight out of a Canadian stream, and that was really good.
Hmm.
Popped it in a frying pan and fried it up. It was quite tasty.
I like it seared like it's a steak
Mm-hmm.
with some garlic.
I like salmon. Texas, I like salmon and tuna both. Orange roughy is good too, but it's very expensive.
Mm. Yeah, we don't usually get much fresh tuna. Is kind of it's expensive compared to other types of fish,
Yeah.
but it's also something that doesn't appear every day on the fish market.
Gore's talking about catfish. It's not only popular in Texas; it's pretty popular all around the southern United States.
Hmm.
Anywhere south of Mason-Dixon line, there's a lot of people like catfish. I like catfish, but I don't like it when it's breaded too much.
Hmm.
People just love to coat it in breading and then fry it and whatever. I like it better without the breading on it.
That's the problem. And river fish have this tendency to have more bones than fish from the sea.
Yeah,
So you have to cut around them.
yeah. When I was a kid, me and my grandfather would go fishing for trout, and one of the first things you do is debone them, and it's a lot of work.
Hmm. Didn't comment. I don't remember.
I'm a chef.
I think I've seen a couple of manga,
Yeah.
and there was the Anthony Bourdain graphic novels, Get Jiro. Those came out through Vertigo.
I know all his life he wanted to be a comics artist.
Hmm.
It's interesting. I can't really think a lot of food related comics in the U.S. market. It's not really food, but the one I remember most is Too Much Coffee Man by Shannon Wheeler.
Yeah. I, I have a comic about beer makers. It was written by Jean Van Am,
Yeah.
the guy who came up with 13 and Torgal in Largo Winch. That's the one. Get Jiro. Joe Keating. Now that does seem
Not a name I'm
familiar.
familiar with.
Now that does seem familiar, but I can't place it.
I don't know.
Hmm.
That's interesting. You would think there would be more food related comics, maybe even just as a comedy angle, but there's not many.
Yeah, that's the beer comic, the Brewmasters. Les Maîtres de l'Orge. I think I mentioned it late in Earl Grey's stream last Sunday. I mentioned it in the chat.
Well, if you're talking about beer, that's going to lead to a different kind of stream later. So.
The thing is, the comic is actually about making beer. It's a family drama,
Mm-hmm.
and then they have rival families competing for the beer market.
Right. I don't know if it's COVID related so much or not, but there are tiny little microbreweries popping up around here all the time. And I don't drink beer, and I kind of feel left out, because it seems like every 2 or 3 months there's a little microbrewery or a restaurant that has a brewery built into it. They're just popping up like nobody's business. garlic and butter, milk and cheese.
Uh-huh. The most offensive dairy products ever.
Yes, indeed. Boy, poor old Evan Dorkin's having a hard time the past couple of years too.
Yeah.
He's having all kinds of problems he's been dealing with.
Yeah, these cartoonists, if it's not easy for them to maintain brand awareness for more than a decade.
Yeah. Plus, it's hard to make any money at it too.
Mm-hmm. See, the way that they put out comics, stuff like Milk and Cheese and Too Much Coffee Man, or Scud the Disposable Assassin.
I remember.
If that thing had come out in France, it would have sold better across the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
I never read Chew. I know a little bit about it, but not a whole lot.
Okay, I think we've exhausted all food groups.
Probably.
And we've been going on for 2 hours and 15 minutes. People seem to have enjoyed the spin-off show, so maybe we can do this again when Tim and Jared are not available.
Possible.
But because Tim did say that he wants to do the regular show tomorrow night, so make sure you tune in if you don't have anything to do on a Saturday night.
Yeah, I already have other things, so I won't be able to make that one.
Mm-hmm. So I thought we would make this one and talk about everything under the sun, or in my case, under the moon, because it's 1 a.m. So I think we're about ready to call this one off. We actually had a fair number of visitors. I was expecting 0 people to show up, and in the end,
attendance knee breakers. That's funny.
No. Yeah, we'll try to do this one again, and one of these days. Thank you very much for everybody for coming. Tune in tomorrow to the Cavern of Chaos in its usual place, and have a nice night.
See you later.
And always keep reading old comics.